These are always awkward to start, but I'm live. Got a weird notification as I started to get this thing rolling here. I'm running 3 minutes behind, but it's like live streaming's not available now, and I just refreshed it. Everything was good. All is good in the world. All is good in the world wide web. I gotta start drinking. That's what needs to happen. What a day. Monday, everybody. Welcome to Pour Another Packers podcast. Live. The best way to end your Monday evening, in my personal opinion. Because we get to talk about the Green Bay Packers. We get to talk about being the number 2 seed in the NFC, as I predicted would happen, but I'm not going to toot my own horn. Number 1 Pack chiming in. Alexander chimed in earlier. Not sure if you're still in the chat or not. Hopefully we do get a strong showing. Hopefully we get a strong showing. We get some questions rolling in on here. A lot of mixed feelings about yesterday's win, and I'm so glad it wasn't just me that was having those mixed feelings, and it was Aaron Rodgers who had a little bit of mixed feelings after the press game, or after the game in his press conference. And he's known for these one-liners. You gotta love his one-liners where he goes, "The way we're playing might be ugly to some folks. I wouldn't mind winning ugly all the way to the Super Bowl," and who knows? Maybe that will carry over. Maybe that will be the silver bullet comment from Aaron Rodgers. He had actually another one a couple weeks ago that I thought was pretty interesting, and I've been saving these as they've come across my news feed. The other one was, "The gap isn't execution; it's not ability. The gap is execution. Excuse me. It's not ability. It's not talent. It's execution." The gap, of course, being the Green Bay Packers and some of those, the 49ers, the Saints, the Ravens, some of these teams that just look like they are just gonna grab that Lombardi trophy and hoist it up in a couple months. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in as the crowd starts to roll in, as the comments start to roll in. We got number 1 Pack chiming in with some comments. Melanie with the Go Pack Go, and Junior. Hey there, mate. I don't know if you're from down under, but every time I see "hey," that's kind of where I go with it. I'm either a pirate or a guy from Australia, apparently. So what is going on with Rodgers this year? He's missing throws. What's like every game this year, he's averaging 200 yards and 1 touchdown. That's from number 1 Pack. Well, here's the thing. Here's the reality of the situation is Rodgers is 36 years old, and Rodgers is the same age that Brett Favre was when they drafted Aaron Rodgers and started to look for the heir apparent, the successor for for the Green Bay Packers. And I'm not saying Rodgers is getting old. I mean, he is getting old, but I'm not saying he's lost his touch. I think what we're seeing with Rodgers is a number of different things. And I love this question because you bring up a valid point. He hasn't been playing lights out. He's not looking like the Aaron Rodgers of old, but I don't think we need to panic all that much because he doesn't have to be the Aaron Rodgers of old. The entire Packers offense has shifted to a point where Rodgers doesn't have to go out there every single week and put up Rodgers numbers. And we saw a couple times throughout this season where Rodgers can still do that. You look at the Eagles game where he had a really strong throwing performance. You look at the Oakland Raiders game where he had a really strong performance. We know that he can do it if he needs to do it. But I think the thing that you got to take away from it is he doesn't have to do it every single week. You look at a guy like Aaron Jones yesterday, who had 192 total yards. That is 134 on the ground off of 16 carries. He had 1 touchdown, and then he had another 58 yards in receiving with 6 receptions. He led the team in receiving. He led the team in rushing. There are other players, such as Aaron Jones, that can take some of that off of Rodgers' shoulders. I think when the going gets tough, though, I think when we need to have a Rodgers performance, we will. And I'm not going to disagree with you. I think Rodgers, he overthrew Aaron Jones on a pretty deep ball. He overthrew Jared Cook. Oh, man. Boy, do I miss Jared Cook. He was my favorite. But he overthrew Jimmy Graham on a throw that would have been just a beautiful pass. Yes, he has been off. His passes are not completely on point, but I will not bet against him. I still think he has a lot of football left in him, and I am anticipating him to just turn it on when we need to see him turn it on. Otherwise, I'll agree with you at that point. There might be something going on with him, but absolutely, I think he's been playing just as good as he needs to play. He doesn't have to go out there and throw 400 yards and throw 4 touchdowns week to week, and they'll be perfectly fine. I did a little chuckle in that comment or in that answer because Junior's actually from Vegas. Nowhere near Australia the last time I looked at a map, and definitely not a pirate. So, although in a roundabout way, the Oakland Raiders are going to Las Vegas, and their mascot is a raider, aka a pirate. So I'm going to throw myself a little bit of a curveball there. I'm going to give myself some bonus points for my answer on that one. Alexander, tuning in. You are here. You are commenting. I did check out your channel last week after I went live. It was a lot of fun for me to actually see what you look like, because for the most part I have no idea what any of you guys look like who tune in every Monday night. So I got to see your face. I got to see some of your videos. My wife absolutely loves your videos. If for anything, she can just it calms her. She has anxiety. It calms her down. Makes her day. So you keep doing what you're doing over there. Looking at your question though, or looking at your comment, you're going with another top 10 here. Baltimore 1, San Francisco 2, New Orleans 3, Kansas City 5, Seattle 6, Minnesota 7, and Green Bay 8, followed by Tennessee and Buffalo, and then the Rams. Wait, I think I might have bounced that a little bit, but regardless, the one thing I took away from that is that you have Minnesota, Seattle, Kansas City, New Orleans, San Francisco, and Baltimore, all above Green Bay. You do not have New England in your top 10 whatsoever, which is a little bit of a hot take, if I do say so myself. But as far as those teams that are ahead of us, I can't really disagree with you. I mean, I look at Baltimore, San Francisco, New Orleans, Kansas City, Seattle, and Minnesota. Man, I wish there weren't so many, so I didn't have to spit that out every time I said it. I look at those teams, though, and I would agree that each of those teams look a little bit more cohesive or a little bit more on point with how they're performing right now. And I think that was the most disappointing thing that we took away from that Redskins game yesterday, is that with how hot they started in the first quarter, both on offense and defense, they just kind of sputtered the rest of the game, and they hobbled to a victory, and it was closer than it needed to be. That's not what you want to see out of a team that you want to go deep into the playoffs and make a Super Bowl run. I would agree that Minnesota game in 2 weeks is going to start to give you that taste of playoff football, and hopefully some things will happen in Green Bay's favor as we move forward. Rodgers' receivers aren't helping him out, but he's also looking for the home run play rather than taking what the defense gives him. He is looking for a lot of home run plays, and he definitely has not found the home run plays. I talked about 2 weeks ago against the New York Giants, who are playing tonight on Monday Night Football. I do have that in front of me right now, as Eli Manning makes a resurgence in his career. But we did talk about how Lazard had that 40-yard touchdown against the Giants, and that kind of seemed like one of those home run plays that we have been missing throughout the year. Jordy Nelson, I saw a top plays of Jordy Nelson's career video on YouTube just the other day, and boy, oh boy, did that guy. You want to talk about your home run balls, and you want to look at your big-time plays and yards after catch. Man, you really don't realize how important the talent of the receiver is for like a guy like Jordy Nelson. Man, I miss you. But when he was, now that he's gone, there's definitely a lacking talent, and it has me starting to experiment and think about drafting a receiver a little bit higher in the draft. But we're not going to go down that until someone decides to ask the weekly draft pick question. That shave is 100. Yes, every couple. I look young. I've got a baby face, 100%. Every 30 to 45 days, I decide just to shave it all off, start over, and that's kind of my shaving regimen. What are you drinking on? Man, I got some regular Jack Daniels. Tonight I am drinking Red Stag. I don't have anything to mix with it. I'm not going to complain. And I haven't had a chance to drink. I really got to slow down with some of these comments and drink a little bit more. I guarantee it's going to get more entertaining if I get a buzz going. Oh, yeah. Much better. Big B's in the house. What's up, man? Thank you for tuning in. Graham25, how would you say LaFleur's first season is going? I personally had them at best a 10-6 road playoff team as long as the marbles fell into place. To me, they have exceeded all expectations. Well, the best thing about having a YouTube channel is I put my stupid predictions and my thoughts out there and save them on the internet where people will eventually dig them up, hopefully one day, and call me absolutely foolish. But when I did my season predictions, I think it was my first ever Packers podcast video. I saw the Green Bay Packers going 12-4 or 11-5. I knew that this team had talent. You look at, we talked about Rodgers already. We look at Adams. We look at the additions that they made in free agency. I did think this team would have, success this season. I did think that they would position themselves at 11-5, 12-4, which they are definitely on pace to be 12-4, I think, at the very worst, and then 13-3 at the very best. So we can talk about that in a little bit. I think the one thing I didn't realize was LaFleur, who had his 10th win yesterday, is the most wins by a rookie head coach in franchise history, and you're talking about a long, historic Green Bay Packers franchise. I think that in itself speaks a lot to what he's been able to do. Yes, the talent plays a big key, but you're talking about coaches that have come into situations and haven't been able to make a deep playoff or position themselves with 3 weeks to go as the number 2 seed. I think that LaFleur has done an absolutely outstanding job. I think there's still a lot of room for improvement. I think he is going to be really critical of himself when the season ends, and he's already talking about adjustments that he's looking to make as the offseason approaches and as they enter year 2 underneath his system. But I think you're going to find I really look at next year as being a special year for this team. I think another year under his system, another offseason, another year with Za'Darius and Preston being acclimated into that defense, and I think the future is very bright for Green Bay, 100%. But yeah, they've exceeded a lot of people's expectations to be where they're positioned right now, to essentially have they control their own destiny. With 3 weeks to go, they control their own destiny on whether they will have a first round bye and host a game in the divisional round of the NFC playoffs. And that's I think that is quite the feat to have for a rookie head coach and everything that goes into it. What else we got here? Junior commented in, so people are upset because how close the game was. You have to remember that they are a professional NFL team. They aren't going to just let us run them over. It's not so much that it was a close game. It's not so much that it was 20-15, whatever. I think it was 20-15 was the final score. It's what concerns me is what we have seen through week 14, through 13 NFL games this year. We've seen a pattern, and it's week in and week out. The Green Bay Packers have yet to put together a complete 4-quarter performance, a dominant performance against a really good team or against a struggling team. And yes, it's NFL, and yes, a struggling team can have their weeks. And Washington was coming off of 2 wins against the Carolina Panthers and the Detroit Lions, and they've kind of had a little bit of resurgence ever since Bill Callahan took over as their head coach. But that's what concerns me more than anything. I'm waiting for them to turn the dial. I'm waiting for that switch to flip. We are 3 weeks away from the start of the NFL playoffs, and it could very well be a bye week where we get a chance to maybe regroup and get ready for those opponents. But that's the most concerning thing. They had a really hot first quarter. You look at their first quarter yesterday, Green Bay is able to put up 14 points. Their first 3 defensive possessions for Green Bay, they forced 3 straight 3-and-outs. They held Washington to a total of 4 yards. That was what you wanted to see out of this team for the rest of the game. And then just kind of like clockwork, something happens, and the offense starts to miss some plays. They start to struggle to convert on third downs. I got to see a consistent game out of these guys, and I'm always a Packer fan. I will always be a Packer fan. It's okay to be critical of the Packers. I've said this over and over, but that was probably the most disheartening thing. That's when the game ended. I was not as satisfied being 10-3 and being the number 2 seed as I would have been had they had gone out there and put together just an ass kicking of the Washington Redskins, which I think was something that they were more than capable of doing. We got a comment in here. I'm losing my spot all over the damn place. Comments are rolling in tonight. This is a good time. Ryan, what a beautiful game that was Sunday. Our receivers finally stepped up and did something at least. Beautiful game. Graham 25, what's your early score prediction on the Vikings-Packers upcoming? I got it being one of the games of the year. I got it 27-24. Graham is making predictions against the Viking game in 2 weeks. We got the Bears ahead of us, though. We cannot look past the Bears. The Bears are looking better. I'm not saying that the Bears are going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying that they're going to shatter the world by any means, but Chicago hates Green Bay. They hate Green Bay. The recent history between these two teams, I think personally, and maybe you guys can comment in the section down below, I hate the Bears probably more than any other team in the NFL, and I gotta think that the feeling is mutual. Chicago Bears fans do not like Green Bay Packer fans. So even though their season is somewhat lost, I believe they're sitting at a 7-6 record. There might be some mathematical chance they make the playoffs. I think it's really slim to none at this point, though. They're going to want to beat Green Bay. They're going to want to go out there, and that's kind of what their season is going to crescendo to. They're going to want to go out there and upset Green Bay and destroy any momentum that they're starting to build. So before we look forward to that Vikings game, I'm not going to give you a score prediction, mainly because I need to see an improvement. This is week to week for this Packers team. They're getting a little bit better, it seems, week to week, or some things are looking better than others from week to week. I will not give you a score prediction. It will be a close game. I don't expect a blowout. I do expect that to be one of Rodgers' better games of the season. I love the fact that it's indoors. I think that Rodgers plays fantastic indoors. Yes, it's going to be the U.S. Bank Stadium, and it's going to be loud, and that fucking Viking horn is going to be doo-doo! Nobody wants to hear that. I don't want to hear that. So it's going to be a hostile place to play, but I do expect it to be a close game. And I do think the more and more closer that we get to it, I'm starting to lean a little bit more towards the Packers than my initial gut feeling of this being one of those losses on the year. Number one Pack comments in, what do you think about the Packers trading for Odell next year? It's going to be way too much money. Don't even start thinking about stuff like that. It's going to cost the Packers way too much money, and they do not have that type of cap space. I think you can draft high in the draft and take a talented wide receiver that you're high on, but I don't think that you can afford to go out there and get Odell Beckham, nor do I think that I'd want that in my locker room, quite frankly. I think he's an outstanding, talented player, but I think I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we got to stop the rumor mill before the rumor mill even gets going. If Rodgers just starts to hit the 5 to 8 hard screens and slants, he can let the wide receivers and running backs do the run after rack. Why is that escaping me? Run after carry? Somebody comment down below what rack means before I lose my frickin' mind, because it's embarrassing that I can't remember that. So yeah, that's something we haven't seen. I mean, I looked at Aaron Jones' performance yesterday. The fact that he had 58 yards off of 6 receptions says that they're still kind of using him out of the backfield as an option. We haven't seen a ton of slant passes, though. We haven't seen, that was kind of a Mike McCarthy thing where you'd have a Randall Cobb cutting across the middle. You look at that Bears game in week 1 of 2018, Randall Cobb cuts across the middle, Rodgers hits him in the slant, and Randall just goes for a 75-yard touchdown. Haven't seen a lot of that this year in general. And you'd think that at some point the play action would open up the deep ball, and they've had enough running capabilities to open up that play action, but we haven't seen any of those deep passes whatsoever. Run after catch. Thank you, RAC, run after catch. I'm used to YAC, yards after catch. YAC. That's my acronym that I always use. How about LaFleur being the first coach in Packers history to win 10 games his rookie year? I commented on that before, Snow. But yes, that is a huge achievement. I'm really proud of that guy. I'd love to see him succeed. He's a younger coach. He has so much going against him. He's got all the pressure in the world. There was so much drama as far as who would want to come in or who could come in and coach Aaron Rodgers after the tumultuous ending between him and Mike McCarthy. And I love seeing him on the sideline still. I love seeing him in the press conferences. He is young. I think he has a bright future ahead of him, and he is very fortunate to have number 12 under center in his first coaching job in the NFL. Kyler, chiming in. I haven't seen you comment in a while, Kyler. Did you see that Looney got moved to tight end? Why? Just why? Well, I heard about it. they asked LaFleur, speaking of press conferences, they asked LaFleur in his press conference if he's ever seen anything like this before, where they've moved such a significant change in a position, and LaFleur couldn't recall anything, especially not in the middle of the season. It is pretty interesting. I mean, we have talent at tight end, but maybe they're looking at options when you inevitably let Jimmy Graham go at the end of the season. Mercedes Lewis is probably in his final year of the NFL. I wouldn't mind having him back for one more year, but he's probably in the final year of the NFL. So you're left with Tonyan, you're left with Sternberger, and then apparently you have Looney as a potential option at tight end. Who knows? Maybe they see something that we don't see, but he hasn't had any game footage, so we can't go off of that. And practices are all behind closed doors, so they see something in that. They definitely see something in that. Drink break. Definitely need a drink break. Talking too much. Talking too fast. Talking too much. It's good. It's good. So yeah, I got a ton of comments here. I was watching. I know a lot of you guys know about Tom Grossi, and when he does his live, he does like live casts of these football games. I'm pointing at my iPad because the Monday Night Football game's on. He has so many comments that people actually have to donate for him to read their comments, and I'm like, that is almost insane because the comment stream's going fast and fast. I don't want your guys' money. I just want a community of diehard Packer fans, and I think that might be a trademark term, so I should be careful how much I say that. But just a community of Packer fans like to kind of chime in and talk Packers, and of course I appreciate the support, but we'll see. We'll see where this channel eventually evolves and where it goes. Do you see us releasing Graham and re-signing Martinez? Yes, I do. I think you have to sign Martinez. I know there's a lot of haters on the Martinez train. Graham will not be in Green Bay unless they restructure his contract, but he has not had the performance that warrants a $10 million a season roster spot. I think you have a lot of talent in both Tonyan and Sternberger that will eventually start to shine a little bit more. Tonyan had a touchdown on Sunday, of all things. And I think Martinez is just one of those guys. I don't think you have to pay him a ton of money. He's Mr. Consistent. He doesn't always, but he tends to lead the team in tackles every given week. I think you got to bring him back, and I think he's a kind of a captain of the backfield. What do you think about Packers trading for Odell? I'm not doing that anymore. Will Jones hit 20 touchdowns? What is Jones at? I'd have to look that up. He was at 14 touchdowns a couple of weeks ago. Will he hit 20 touchdowns? He probably will hit 20 touchdowns. You look at matchups against the Lions and the Bears, I think those are opportunities to sneak in a touchdown, if not 2 touchdowns in one of those games. And then I got to think that he will show up to play against the Vikings as well. So, with assuming that he's at 16, 17 touchdowns at this point, I do think that he will hit 20 touchdowns. And wouldn't that be something to have a running back that hits 20 total touchdowns? That'd be pretty sweet. Melanie, I love listening to you on Monday night. I was watching the Eagles and Giants game. The Giants are winning the game right now. Melanie, going on with the comment. Thank you, Melanie, for the love. I am watching the game as well. 17-3. What the hell is up with the Eagles? How did we lose to the Eagles? And that was the one game this year that I went to, and they just put a dud. It was a high-scoring game. I mean, this is one of those things where if we played the Eagles now and the Packers knew that they were facing a 5-7 opponent and you had some game footage to go off, I think this is, a little bit more beneficial for the Packers. The Eagles were playing for a lot, though, in that matchup. They were 1-2 on the season. They had to essentially win that game to keep pace with the Dallas Cowboys, who we thought would be much better than they were. And these guys are still keeping pace with each other. It's just a 6-7 type of pace versus a 9-6 or a 10-5 or anything else like that. It's just NFC East, garbage fire. Garbage fire! What else is going on in the comment section? Which NFC East team do you believe has the best shot at upsetting a team like the Niners or Seahawks in the wild card round? I have thought about this, Matthew. So this question's from Matthew. I have thought about this. I thought a couple weeks ago that the Eagles would be the team that would win the division. I thought that they had a little bit, better, obviously a better coach than with Doug Peterson over Jason Garrett. I like the quarterback with Wentz over Prescott. Obviously, I think the running back nod easily goes to the Dallas Cowboys. I like the Eagles winning this conference. Maybe they still will. I do think that Dallas will somehow find a way to pull this off. Now, the tricky part for Dallas is that they have 3 games remaining. They play the Rams next week, and the Rams did an absolute they just showed up and destroyed the Seattle Seahawks and kind of shell-shocked them. And then they face off against the Eagles, and then they finish their season against the Redskins. I think the Cowboys will win 2 of those 3 games. I don't see them winning the Rams, personally. I think they would end up winning the division, especially if the Philadelphia Eagles go on to lose tonight. And then I look at who would that be in our playoff seedings here. We would have, currently, we'd have Seattle heading to Dallas. Boy, maybe there's a shot of an upset there. I think that Dallas probably has the better chance at upsetting someone. And they just have so much talent. They have the pieces on that team. And Jason Garrett and his hand clapping just has not been able to propel them to the next level. And it's reminiscent of the Packers teams last year. They had the talent, they had the experience, but McCarthy was just laying duds left and right on the coaching tree. And I think the writing's obviously on the wall. But Dallas, I think, gets the nod. Dallas probably has the best chance of upsetting someone. I think that with how poor they've been playing, if they can find a way, also. I don't know if it happens against the Rams, though. If they beat the Rams, that would be kind of the light the fire underneath Dallas's. I'm just going to say ass because I can't think of anything else to say. Light the fire, and maybe they will actually be the team that upsets one of those big name teams come playoff time. I hate the Lions most of any team. That's Graham's input. In case you're tuning in just now, I talked about the NFC North teams that I hate the most, and the Bears are definitely the team that I hate the most. It was the whole Jay Cutler time. Jay Cutler, now that he's not in football, I think he's a pretty cool dude. He has that reality TV show. Not that I watch it. I've heard he had a reality TV show. He's a funny guy. He's got some cool hobbies. He's just a regular dude and enjoys hunting. Typical dude. But when he was on the Bears and he had that neck twitch and he's sitting there on the sidelines and looking at Rodgers do Rodgers things, those were some of the happiest moments of my life. I was never worried about Jay Cutler upsetting us by any means. So went off of that. Lions is Graham's most hated team. The Bears are still my most hated team. Junior goes in. I hate the Seahawks, and there's a lot of hate for the Seahawks. I love the city of Seattle. I think Seattle's absolutely beautiful. I can't say I hate the Seahawks 100%. I love those matchups, and the Seahawks have had our number the last couple of years, so maybe that's where some of your hate is coming from. Or maybe it's just the fact that there's a bunch of 8 to 13-year-old boys that have jumped on the Russell Wilson Seahawks bandwagon, and that could create a lot of hate, because if there's any sort of hate that comes from Seattle, that is some of the hate that comes for Seattle from me personally. It's all those I don't want to see I hate walking around my daughter's elementary school and seeing all these Seahawk fans. What are they doing? Who are their parents? Go out there and parent your children. This is Packer country. This is absolutely ridiculous. Alexander commenting in, all he has to do is he's going back onto these receivers. Alexander is going to solve by the end of this live stream tonight. Alexander is going to solve the Packers' offensive woes. He has to use his secondary receivers on short routes and use Jones and Williams as pass catchers, just like Dorsey Levens and Edgar Bennett. Maybe before your time, not before my time. I know who those boys are. I know Big B probably doesn't know who those boys are. He's a big Packer fan, but I don't think he was old enough to know to know the Dorsey Levens type of days. But yeah, I mean, we got to see secondary receivers step up at some capacity. We've seen it out of Lazard to an extent, but Allison and MVS and Kumaro, they've all just been crickets, just absolutely silent. And where did they come up with crickets as like the idea of silence? Crickets are not silent whatsoever. I mean, they're constantly cricketing all over the place. Melanie chimes in. I think that the Packers will have 30 and the Bears. Damn you, drink coming up to me on a impromptu burp. Packers will have 30, Bears 25. Go Pack, go. So that's Melanie's prediction of the game next week. I hope we don't give up 25 points to the Bears, but they have been playing better, and it's going to be one of those games where you can't really focus on just the running back or just the quarterback. You have to go out there and kind of prepare for semi-talented both. I think Mitch Trubisky questionably has had a rocky year but he's had 2 great weeks of football, and he is coming into Green Bay with a lot of confidence under center. We are 33 minutes into tonight's Monday night podcast, live Q&A, 15 current viewers. Thank you guys all for tuning in, chiming in, and supporting this and being here tonight. Absolutely. Drink break. Cheers. Drink break. If you got one, drink it. If you got one, drink it. Junior goes on to ask, do you see us keeping Allison? I do see us keeping Allison. I mean, when you're looking at kind of the cream of the crop of wide receivers, unless they go out and draft a high pick, I think that bodes worse for a guy like Kumaro than it does for Allison. I think this is a 5 to 6 wide receiver team, according to how LaFleur likes to structure his teams. I think we will continue to carry anywhere from 3 to 4 running backs at any given time on our roster, which then takes away from the wide receivers. Although with the subtraction of some tight ends possibly, that could add a little bit more room for wide receivers moving forward. But I think they hang on to Allison. I think that he's still capable and a talented wide receiver. He's just having a rough year for whatever reason. There's my answer for run after catch, so that's where we're at that point. Trick plays, Junior. Thank you for bringing it up. So I have it on my phone. I have a bunch of notes. I mean, in case it gets quiet in here and I just end up talking to myself, the questions don't come in. I do make notes throughout the games, and trick plays is the number one thing that I wrote down. Now, your comment of trick plays has to do with Looney and possibly lining him up, as either a lineman or a tight end, an eligible receiver, if you will. But I look at the reason I wrote down trick plays in my little. It's not even a little. My iPhone, my little book of notes is what I was going to say. One thing that stands out to me with some of these higher echelon teams that have been successful over the years, and we can use tons of examples throughout NFL history, but these teams that are successful and make deep playoff runs and make their way to the Super Bowl and upset teams like New England, trick plays is a common thing that I want to see a little bit more of out of Matt LaFleur's system. Now, I was surprised when they came out of the bye, not only that they got their asses absolutely handed to them by the San Francisco 49ers, but I was surprised that we didn't see a whole lot of different formations or schemes from LaFleur having that bye week and having a little bit of time to prepare against the 49ers. Now, I think this is something that hopefully we'll maybe he's saving it for a tougher opponent or for a more unexpected moment, but I'd love to see more trick plays out of Green Bay. I don't know whether that's a fake punt or if that's a wide receiver throwing a pass type of situation like we saw with San Francisco doing yesterday. But these successful teams do this on a constant basis, and they have gotten more aggressive. I love the fact that they went for 4th down. I think they went for 4th down at least 3 times yesterday, and if I'm not mistaken, they converted on all of them, if I'm not mistaken. So I love that they're being more aggressive in that fact. I like that they're going for it, that they're not that they don't trust Mason Crosby, that they just want to keep that offense out there. They feel like they can score when given the chance. So trick plays and being aggressive are kind of my 2 X factors for this Green Bay Packers team as they turn the corner and head into the playoffs, and definitely something that I want to see a little bit more of as the season continues to progress. I mean, guys, we have 3 weeks left. It's so crazy. Training camp doesn't seem like that long ago, and the start of the season wasn't that long ago. We only have 3 weeks left of the regular season, and then it starts to go downhill when we talk about the offseason, because that's a long way until August again. Do you see Robert Tonyan getting more targets as we inch closer to the playoffs? I think if Graham continues to look as slow and as aged as Graham does, I think that Robert Tonyan should definitely get more targets, and I'd like to see Sternberger get in there for a couple passes as well. You go on to say, what do you think of our new kick returner / punt returner? I think our addition of Tyler Ervin was a great addition. I think that initial performance yesterday against the Redskins was phenomenal. He had 4 returns for 51 yards total. He averaged 12.8 yards per return. There was a lot that I liked to see. There was a lot that I liked in his performance yesterday. I think that it added a little bit of a jolt. It gave the Packers some great field position. They were somewhere around midfield a lot of the time throughout that game. And so, yeah, early impressions are pretty high for Tyler. Interesting to see. I doubt that they will use him in the running back capacity whatsoever, especially if you do have a healthy Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. But, yeah, I think that was a great move. It was definitely an upgrade from Tremont Smith. And kind of excited to see with a couple more weeks of practice if they can maybe get a potential punt return for a touchdown or decent kick return yards as well. Alexander, Bears are playing at a high level right now. Let's not be fooled by 7-6. They're playing close to last year's level. They are playing at a very high level right now. The defense is looking good. That offense is looking good. It was funny listening to the commentators on Tyler Ervin when he kept getting our longest punt returns each punt. Yes, it was. Their statistics, I mean, Green Bay's statistics for punt returns up to this point were absolutely awful. They've been very bad, very bad. Let's see here. Jack Knight probably don't sleep on the Bears game. The more divisions you have, the more diversing teams get left out. I predict next week's game 27-17. Packers, that's Graham's prediction for next week's game. We're at home. We can get out to a 14-7, 14-3 lead and basically keep that margin all of the game. It's going to definitely be a different matchup. I don't think it's going to be a defensive battle like it was in Week 1. I think you're gonna see a lot more offense across the board. You're going to have a lot of footage for the Packers to study, not only from their first time that they met in Week 1, but you're going to have some from the previous weeks here where they can kind of go off of. I don't expect it to be a defensive performance. I think what do you have, 27-17 Packers? Yeah, I mean, I like taking the Packers in the high 20s on a week in and week out basis. Maybe a little bit closer than that, though. If you're going to give the Bears 17, maybe the Packers are somewhere around 24. So maybe a field goal shy. Hopefully not a Mason Crosby missed field goal by any means. MVS is really not performing like I would like him. Yeah, Junior, your thoughts are not alone on that one. He has not performed. He's not had mistake me if I'm wrong, or don't, but I'm pretty sure MVS is one of, if not our fastest receiver on our team. And yeah, he has not been able to get any separation and get some of those deep balls. He's had some deep catches. I can count on one hand how many deep catches he's had throughout the entire year. But yeah, we got to see those guys step up. At some point, these guys have to step up and start performing. Graham25 ironically says, I see us releasing Jimmy Graham at the end of the season. I would love it if we used our second or third round draft picks on a new tight end. I would have loved it if TJ Hawkinson was still available instead of Rashawn Gary in the first round last year. I would have absolutely enjoyed having him on our team versus Rashawn Gary. And that's nothing against Rashawn Gary. I think that he will grow and develop. He hasn't had an outstanding rookie year for a first round draft pick, but TJ Hawkinson has. And he would have been a great weapon to have on our offense, especially with the type of season that Jimmy Graham is having. We should use our picks on a big middle linebacker or a good wide receiver because we have a bunch of tight ends. So here we go to the draft, guys. People are chiming in about what we think we should do with our draft picks. Seems to happen every single week, which only adds to the anticipation of the NFL draft next April. So you guys remember Ty Summers? He is one of the middle linebackers that we drafted last year in the draft. I've not heard his name in weeks. He does not get out on the playing field whatsoever. Kind of interesting. I like what I saw in his film. I liked his motor. I like that he goes out there and he hits people. I am still curious if that's a player that can still emerge to help out in the middle linebacking group. Oren Burks has been very quiet as well, as far as just hearing his name thrown around in any capacity. It's really been Blake Martinez and it's been the Smith guys. Adrian Amos had a great game yesterday. He had 1 sack and 1 interception. Not a middle linebacker, but I just wanted to point out that he had a great performance yesterday when we haven't heard his name a ton as well. But I don't know. I'm not sold on the idea of drafting middle linebacker. I am more sold on the fact of drafting a really talented wide receiver at this point. I think a really good wide receiver to complement Davante Adams could do wonders for Aaron Rodgers in that passing attack. Packers were 2-2 yesterday on 4th down. So they only went for it twice on 4th down. That was a little bit of a surprise. Thank you, Big B, for doing the fact checking. You are the assistant of all assistants, and you're not even getting paid for it, which is you're my intern of fact checking. So much appreciation going to that stat. So yeah, they were aggressive. They went for it twice on twice on fourth down. They went 2 for 2 in the game. Junior, do you think St. Brown is the second? Oh yeah, well, good point. You're full of dandy little one-liners tonight, aren't you, Junior? So St. Brown is kind of that X factor as far as a player that could potentially have a comeback year next year. Now remember, he got hurt weeks before the final cuts. He got placed on injured reserve. Probably could have came back at this point, realistically, but they decided to just keep him out for the entire year. He's probably lower on their depth chart. But remember, Allen Lazard was originally cut from our 53-man roster when that took place, and they signed him back to the practice squad. And then, obviously, we all know the rest of the story, that he has emerged as our number 2 wide receiver. So there's definitely possibilities of St. Brown having a resurgence in the offseason and being bigger and better, and that type of player that Rodgers can count on week in and week out. And that's, I think, now that I say that out loud, I mean, Rodgers has struggled to find confidence with a number of those wide receivers in that offense. I think he knows what he has out of Adams. He knows what he has out of Lazard. I think that trust has really grown. You know he loves Kumerow, but he just doesn't throw to Kumerow a whole lot. And I don't think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that he just hasn't been able to get open, and it could be a route running sort of a thing. Definitely need to see some more wide receiver step up. Wide receiver. Jordy could have played for the Pack this year. I think he would have been a perfect number 2. It also would have made Rodgers more comfortable. I was totally on board with the idea of bringing Jordy back, and I know I was against the grain, or it wasn't the popular opinion to bring Jordy back. And I don't know if Jordy did actually want to come back, but I would have loved to see them bring back Jordy Nelson. And yeah, I agree with you. He would have been a great number 2. He didn't have to be the guy. Adams could have been the guy, and Jordy they would have switched roles a little bit, and Jordy definitely would have been a great complement to the passing. I guarantee that guy can still play football. I guarantee 100% that guy can still play football. MVS played 16% of snap count yesterday, getting lower. Looks like the Packers are rolling with GMO, Kumerow, and Lazard. Big B, my stats guy, coming in again once more for those. Number 1 Pack. Do you think Matt LaFleur pursues his brother that works for the 49ers next year? He tried this year but couldn't get him. I think he will pursue his brother to be on his coaching staff every single chance that he gets, every single year. It would be a lot of fun to have both those guys on the team, in the locker room, under the Green Bay mantra, or just on Lombardi Avenue coaching. That would be a lot of fun. I do think that he will pursue him, to answer your question. It'll just be really interesting to see whether Kyle Shanahan decides to let him go. Shanahan just nipped that in the bud, didn't even give it any chance of life. But maybe with a year under LaFleur's belt, another year of coaching, he will be okay with releasing him and letting him head to Green Bay. Do we win the tiebreakers versus the Saints / Seattle for playoffs? Well, let's have a little bit of fun, guys. This is a good segue. I got ADU in here, 43 minutes into this. I wanted to do this last week, but if we look at our, we're going to switch up the camera a little bit here. Let me mess around with some stuff. So let's go to display capture. We are displaying my desktop. So current playoff picture. So if you want to talk about tiebreakers and whatnot, we do not own the tiebreaker over the Seattle Seahawks. So if you look at, let's just head to week 15 real quick. If we look at Seattle getting themselves another victory and San Francisco losing, you will see that even with 3 losses apiece, Green Bay gets a victory. Even sitting at 11-3 and 11-3, Seattle does own the tiebreaker over the Green Bay Packers. Now, the same cannot be said for the New Orleans Saints. So if the Saints somehow find themselves on the winning end against the Indianapolis Colts next week, even at 11-3, and it's just like it is right now, both the Saints and the Packers are sitting at 10-3. The reason why Green Bay has that second seed is because they own the tiebreaker versus the New Orleans Saints. And there's a lot that goes into it. This particular screen here doesn't break it down quite as much as another page that maybe I will pull up next week. But essentially, it boils down to conference opponents more than anything else, and who the losses came against. Now, Green Bay lost one of their games against an AFC opponent in the Chargers, and then they lost their other two against the Philadelphia Eagles and the 49ers. So they only have 2 losses in the entire NFC. I believe New Orleans must have 2 losses, must have all 3 of their losses against the NFC. We'll have to dive into that, won't we? I wish this thing would go back in time. Maybe we'll play a little game. I don't like doing this too much because I don't want to get too far away from you guys. But let's see if my logic here is actually accurate if we talk about schedule. So it was right there. So they lost to the Los Angeles Rams, NFC opponent. They lost to Atlanta, NFC opponent. They lost to the 49ers, NFC opponent. So yeah, they have 3 losses against NFC teams. The Packers only have 2 losses against NFC teams. So that's why they have that tiebreaker. They don't play each other, so they don't have that benefit of knowing a head-to-head matchup who gets that nod. But yeah. Let me pull up this again and tune back in. We'll shut this off for a second, just to see where the comments are at. So yeah, we would win those tiebreakers against the Saints, but not the Seattle Seahawks. And to answer, if we really want to dive into this, here, let's go back. Let's go back, because I thought this would be fun to. I like to play with this thing, and you guys can play with it too when you get the chance. So let's go through some of these games. These are some of my predictions. So I think Baltimore obviously takes that win over there. We're going to take the Patriots. This is kind of an interesting matchup right here as far as what Carolina Panthers team will show up. But I do see Seattle probably bouncing back. I don't see them losing 2 in a row. This game doesn't matter whatsoever, so I'm going to go ahead and just take Tampa Bay. I do see the Packers winning against Chicago. We have the Chiefs. I'm going to take the Dolphins. I'm going to take Houston to bounce back. Dumpster fire over here in the NFC East, so I'm going to go that way. I'm going to go that way with it. We'll take the Browns. We'll take the Raiders. This is an interesting matchup. I'm going to leave that one blank for now. I'm going to take the Rams over the Cowboys, San Francisco, Buffalo, and then the Saints. So after Week 15, kind of sees us shaking out this way. I will come back to this matchup, and I'll come back to it in a second for a particular reason. Following week, we're gonna go here. We're gonna go here. They're gonna get some revenge. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take. You guys are probably like just flipping out. Why is he picking these teams over some of these other ones? Some of these games don't even matter, so don't get too upset about them. Take that. I'm gonna take that. I like the Broncos at home. I like Oakland. That's a dumpster fire right there. We'll come back to that one. I'm going to do this. You guys are going to just fucking explode. I think I just lost all my viewers. But I want to show you something. So I'm going to go that route with it. I have the Packers losing against the Vikings at the end of Week 17. And then we go to our final week. Patriots have the toughest opponent in the league in their final week. They get to face off against the Dolphins. Right. Oops. Browns, Cowboys, Packers, Texans, Rams. Gardner Minshew. I'm taking Gardner Minshew over the Colts because it doesn't even matter in the final week. So there's a couple games that I didn't pick, and these are kind of these to me are my headline games. I should just check to see if you guys are even still tuning in. Perfect. Yeah, I got 8 of you in here. So these are kind of my headline games as we head into the final 3 weeks of the season. So really your biggest ones as we look at Week 14, probably the most important matchup. I don't know why I didn't select that one. Oops, sorry, Week 15. The most important matchup. There isn't one. There isn't really one that stands out in this entire week. I think for the most part, maybe you look at this Rams game as being a potential upset. But this is a really interesting matchup here because I don't really know what to expect out of this Chargers team. Now, the Chargers are playing at home. This is the same scenario that the Packers fell victim to as far as a trap game, if we want to call it that. But, they managed to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars last week. Currently, what do we have? The Chargers sitting at 5-8 currently. So this is one of those games. So if Minnesota should win that game in theory, right? If we head to Week 16, we look at the matchup between the Cowboys and the Eagles. That's going to probably decide the NFC East. I would take the Cowboys in that scenario, but if not, if the Eagles win, so that will decide the victor in that conference, and that is with the Dallas Cowboys losing to the Los Angeles Rams in Week 15, and then finally, I believe they win against the Redskins in Week 17. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one. That game's going to boil down to everything. The way that just the Eagles are po-ducking in it right now against the New York Giants, it is 17-10 right now. But that's kind of how I see that one shaking out. And then it comes down to that final week of the year. And the reason why the final week of the year, I mean, this is exactly why the NFL decided to change the way that they do their seedings and the conference, or excuse me, the division matchups in the final weeks of the year. So now this is a big if, but if Green Bay, let's go back here a little ways. If Green Bay wins out the rest of the year, and Seattle beats the Niners, we would essentially need, so this is kind of how I still see it shaking out. Essentially, the seedings right now is exactly how I see it shaking out. But if we have any shot of having that first seed, we essentially need Seattle to drop a game to the Panthers on Sunday. And at that point, I'm wrong, because the San Francisco 49ers would have to lose a game. How did I mess up? Oh, that's how. So the Rams has to beat the 49ers in Week 16, and Carolina probably is the only team that has a chance to upset the Seahawks outside of the 49ers. So there's just a lot of moving parts as far, I guess what I'm trying to get at is there's a lot of moving parts as far as the Packers getting that first round seed. I don't see them getting the first round seed one way or the other. I find themselves ending up with that 2 seed. And even if, here, let's put this the way that I see it going. So I do see Seattle winning that game. I see Seattle winning that game, quite frankly. And then if we go to Week 16, Vikings. And there was one other one in here. Where was it? Week 17. So that it boils down to that. So if they're going to hold on to the second seed, they can still lose to the Vikings, but they have to hope that New Orleans ends up blowing it at Carolina in the final week of the season. If not, Green Bay ends up the 3rd seed, and they have to face the Minnesota Vikings in the first round of the playoffs. They don't get the luxury of facing off against the Cowboys. They are too good of a team to face off against the Cowboys. And I think if I go back here a little bit, I don't know if San Francisco loses that game. It doesn't matter anyway in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, 3 weeks to go. I encourage you guys to play around with this. I'm kind of curious to see what some of your comments are. So why don't we, bring it back right now and see what you guys have to say. Where are we at? So tiebreaker over Saints. If we went out, we get the 2nd seed. That is, yep, we talked about that. How hard would the Vikings game be? The Vikings game will be extremely hard. I mean, that's going to be, if not for the NFC North, it will definitely be. And I could go back to that little playoff machine. If the Vikings end up losing to the Chargers on Sunday and the Packers beat the Bears, Green Bay can lose their last 2 games in the season and still win the NFC North and still host a playoff game in the wild card of the playoffs. So we got to be all in on the Chargers upsetting the Vikings. Don't necessarily know if that will happen or not, but that's kind of the one of the matchups, if not the matchup that I'm watching as the weekend approaches. But the Viking game is going to be very tough. That's a hostile environment. That's US Bank Stadium. It's one of the loudest stadiums. Maybe not for football, but if you ever get the chance to experience a rock concert in US Bank, not that I have, but I heard it's super loud. I know a guy who knows a guy who got it on. That is a little bit of a that Miss Veronica Vaughn is one hot tamale. That is a Billy Madison reference for all of you out there. Do we have a chance of stopping Dalvin Cook? I think we do have a chance of stopping Dalvin Cook. I think for the most part, when the Packers have been able to focus on running backs, that's the tricky thing with the Vikings, though. So I get into a thought, I get into a sentence, an answer to your guys' questions. The thing with Vikings is, regardless of what you think of Kirk Cousins, I don't think very high of Kirk Cousins, but they have not only a talented quarterback, but a talented running back, and that is something that the Packers really can't just focus in and hone in on. They have weaknesses in the running game, but so far against the Giants, they had to face Daniel Jones. Last week, they had to face Dwayne Haskins, so they could really just focus on stopping Saquon Barkley and Adrian Peterson, respectively, and that was able to kind of help them just kind of coast their way and get themselves an easy victory. But when you look at the Viking matchup and you look at the rest of the teams that they're going to face, you look at Seattle with Wilson and Carson. You look at out there in San Francisco. Well, you look at the Saints with Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara. Those are going to be tough matchups. You look at Baltimore if they are lucky enough to face them in the Super Bowl. You have a guy like Lamar Jackson who can play quarterback and running back at the same time. So we definitely got to figure that out 100% of the way. I do think that they can focus and slow down Dalvin Cook, but the team's going to definitely have to be playing on all cylinders and firing on all cylinders. I think if Seattle loses one game and San Francisco loses 2 games, the Pack can get the 1 seed. That's essentially... the Packers have to win out, and San Francisco has to lose 2 games, and Seattle has to lose 1 more game. Fluffy Boy says, damn, I see how it is. I don't know what you're talking about, Fluffy Boy. Packers sadly going to lose to Bears. I'm feeling it. Wins Falcon coming back. Who the hell is Falcon? You're talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because that is on Disney Plus, and that has not gone live yet. No, they are not sponsoring this and paying me any money to plug Disney Plus, but that's where my mind tends to go. There's no way San Francisco will lose too, and I mean I would agree with you. If I'm looking at what do they have left? So they play the Falcons. Maybe Atlanta plays them tough. Highly unlikely, but maybe they play them tough. They play the Rams. There's one. There's one, and then there's the Seahawks game. There's 2. I mean, I do think that Seattle beat San Francisco at home in the final week of the season. I think it just boils down to, like I said, week 16 when they face off against the Rams, and then Seattle has to absolutely just have a dud of a game against either the Cardinals or against the Carolina Panthers in the next 2 weeks, and that's how Packers can find themselves in the 1 seed of the playoffs. So we are 1 hour into the show. 11 of you guys still hanging out with me, talking about Packers, talking about just football stuff at this point. We went into the entire league going through predictions. Let's go through a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. I'm going to start to pound this drink a little bit faster, and we can wrap it up because there's 6 minutes and 40 seconds left in the game. And Philadelphia just still sucks. We will need to stop the run in the playoffs. That's one of those comments. We will get our first win at US Bank Stadium. That's a good point. We have not won. That's going to be the headline for me right there. Will Green Bay get their first win in US Bank Stadium, or will Kirk Cousins get his first win in Monday Night Football in his career, people? So Kirk Cousins, in case you missed all the headlines that floated around this past week, 0-8 on Monday Night Football. That was obviously coming off the loss to Seattle. That statistic popped up. So he's due one, for lack of a better term. Will it come against Green Bay? We will have to wait to find out. But I think both teams will definitely know what's on the line. And after the Packers' just horrible performance against the 49ers, which is still leaving a terrible taste in my mouth, you got to think that they have to have some sort of motivation of beating a playoff team like the Vikings heading into the playoffs to give them some confidence as the season continues to go. And again, beating the Vikings, the Packers controller of destiny. They win the next 3 games, they automatically stay in that number 2 seed. And I think hosting a team like the Saints or hosting the team like the Niners or the Vikings, quite frankly, those games are going to be one played at Lambeau Field if the Packers are going to have any sort of competitive edge in those matchups. That's becoming more and more evident as we continue to see the same kind of mistakes that Green Bay makes on a week in and week out basis. What's the difference between the 1 and 2 seed? There is not a ton of difference except when it comes down to that final NFC Championship game. If 1 and 2 seeds are both in it still, the 2 has to travel to the 1, and that's always an option. I mean, if we I'm looking at my playoff predictions again, so let's go back to this. So if the Packers end up at the 2 seed, Seattle ends up at the number 1 seed. So if things stay exactly like they were, The winner of the Vikings and the New Orleans Saints game probably goes to the Saints. So the Saints would travel to Green Bay. San Francisco travels to Seattle once again in the divisional round. And then maybe San Francisco doesn't lose 3 times to the Seattle Seahawks. And at that point, San Francisco would have to come to Green Bay for the NFC Championship. That would be a lot of fun. I think there was a really cool video before that Niners and Packer game a couple weeks ago on Sunday Night Football where they talked about the history, and it'd be really sweet just to see. There's so many storylines between those two teams. There's the history of the 90s when these teams would constantly face in the playoffs. You look at the Kaepernick times, just 5-6 years ago when these teams would meet in the playoffs. You look at LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan and LaFleur's brother and coaching for San Francisco. I would love to see a Niners-Packers matchup in Green Bay, which is a definite possibility for the NFC Championship game. That would be get your popcorn ready, and I think that it would be a completely different outcome. Maybe not a Packers win, but definitely a hell of a lot closer game, and definitely not going to be a blowout of the proportion like it was the last time around. That's for sure. If the Smith Bros can get to Cousins consistently, I see us winning that game against the Vikings. The biggest thing that it comes down to, so if you guys want to, if the Packers want to get to a quarterback, this is just the formula to success that we have seen throughout the season. The only way that Preston and Za'Darius truly become effective, and you can maybe start to throw Kenny Clark in that conversation because he had himself a pretty good game yesterday with 1.5 sacks. You have to shut down the run, and you have to get out to an early lead. So if Green Bay can find themselves up 14-0, up 21-0, that really is going to start to take away any opponent's possibility of running the ball. And at that point, you can enforce your 2 pass rushers to kind of get at the quarterback. So whether that be Kirk Cousins, whether it be Drew Brees, whether that be Jimmy Garoppolo, that's really kind of the recipe for success to utilize the best players on our team. So what does that tell us as we talk about the offseason and we talk about the draft? We need to get some players that are capable of stuffing the run and stopping the run, or a defensive coordinator that's capable of coaching against the run. You got to figure out that piece of it because the passing side of it's pretty decent, which brings me to a segue. This isn't even one of the questions here, but how about the fact that Kevin King did not play on Sunday? I was very happy about it. I tweeted about it. If you guys haven't hit me, or if you haven't hit my, I don't know, it's somewhere down here. I'm waiting for the damn screen to catch up. It's over close to the computer. It's over here. If you guys haven't, followed me on Twitter, I don't tweet a whole lot, but I was very excited that Kevin King decided to be inactive for the game. I was looking forward to someone else potentially filling in at that role and maybe showing that they're more capable at that role. So Tramon Williams filled in for him last week. I think Tramon Williams still has gas in the tank. I love what that guy brings to the team. I know a lot of pundits out there say he's slow, he's washed up. He did get called for one pass interference play, penalty on a 3rd down, which was a little bit bogus. It wasn't even pass interference. I would like to see someone else step up as that outside corner, that number 2 corner, and maybe put Kevin King in a different position, a different role in that defense. I think he has the skill set, but I'm just so sick of seeing Kevin King get burned. And I think for the most part that Tramon Williams held up really well on Sunday. So that's my 2 cents on that topic. Oh God, we may have to go back to Seattle flashbacks to 2016 when talking about how the seedings might shake out. Yeah, I mean, it seems like whoever hosts those games the last couple of years, the home team always wins. And that 2016, I think it was, was it 2016? I think was it 2016? I thought it was 2014. 2015? 2015? 2016. I'm not going to debate myself right now. We all know what game we're talking about. We're talking about the Bostic game, for God's sake. That was that game where it seemed like finally the tides had turned and the road team, a.k.a. Green Bay, is just taking it to Seattle. Was 2014. Yeah, I thought it was 2014. I thought it was a little bit older than that. That's where the tides had shifted in that game, and Green Bay they just dominated that whole game. I think Russell Wilson had 4 interceptions that game. The defense was rolling, the offense was rolling. I know flashbacks to that game don't bring happy memories by any stretch of the imagination, but I think Green Bay has enough experience. There's still players on that team that were part of that team And I think that they have the ability to go out there and perform. We'll see. Let's see if it shakes out that way. We can't win in California this year. I agree with you 100%. Snow whiz. So hopefully we don't have to go to San Francisco. I'd much rather go to Seattle in the playoffs than I would go to San Francisco in the playoffs. I don't think the Packers stand a chance against the 49ers on the road. And thank God the Super Bowl's in Miami this year, because we don't want to go to California for any nonsense whatsoever. Adrian Amos going to keep up the good work. Is Adrian Amos going to keep up the good work? I think he's going to keep up the good work. I think he has shown that he is an improvement over HaHa Clinton-Dix. I haven't seen his name come up on a week-to-week basis, but he had a really strong performance. As I mentioned before, yesterday against the Redskins, he had the one sack, the one interception. He had some good passes defended throughout the game. I think he has had a pretty solid year, not a Pro Bowl year or anything that's going to jump off the charts, but both him and Savage have done really well in our secondary and at that safety position. And that safety position was an area of concern for me, because I thought if anybody went out with injuries, that would be a huge red flag for a weakness on our team. And so far they have held up very well. And even though Savage missed some time, that the secondary has played fairly decent outside of Kevin King. If we're going to talk about the secondary, I can't give any credit to Kevin King. Kevin King, you consistently frustrate the hell out of me. Kadar has been hurt forever. Oh man, so the only person I dislike more than Kevin King is probably Kadar Hallman. I don't know why we drafted this guy. To be fair, we haven't seen enough footage of him to say whether or not he is good. But I watched his college footage. I watched his highlight reel, the whole thing, because it was about a minute and a half long, and there wasn't any highlights that this guy was putting out there. I'm not a big fan of Kadar Hallman. He has a great story. He came to the NFL. He worked hard. The American dream. No, I'm not. He's not the answer. He's not. I don't think he's the answer by any stretch of the imagination. Junior's asking, why isn't Grant playing? I think you're talking about Ryan Grant, one of the running backs that we picked up. We just don't. You have a two-headed monster in that backfield, and you're not messing with it. I want to curse there. I got to be careful when I curse. You look at Jones and Williams, but as long as those guys are healthy, as long as they're contributing, you have a great 1-2 punch. I've talked about time and time before. They have different play styles, and they both have different. They both have the skill set to jump out and have impact on the game. You don't have to count on one or the other. Both of them can kind of fill in where the other one is struggling. I don't think you mess with that formula all that much. And Ryan Grant is a wide receiver, so thank you. You want to know why we haven't seen Ryan Grant? Because he's a wide receiver. We don't have wide receivers. So we just throw to Jimmy Graham, and he plays good every other week, and then we throw it to Devonta Adams and Lazard, and then Aaron Jones, and then maybe Mercedes Lewis occasionally. You don't throw it to Kumaro. We don't throw it to Ryan Grant. You don't throw it to Sternberger. Man. Ryan Grant was a running back, though, just in case you forgot. So we're an hour and 11 minutes in. I am watching the end of this game. Might as well stick on here. There's another minute 56 left in this game. 3rd and goal. Looks like Philadelphia has the ball. And for the love of God, do not let this thing go into overtime, because nobody needs to watch the painful NFC East play longer than they already have. And they scored a touchdown. All right. Well, isn't that fun? We'll hang out until this game's over. I might have to go quiet from time to time here, because I'm slowly starting to lose my voice. 2014, worst loss ever. That was the worst loss ever. Man, I don't know about you guys, but I imagine you have your rituals and you have the things you love to do for Packer games. As you are aware, I've talked about before, we have great Packer parties, Jello shots, and food and music, and it's always a good time. And that's part of the reason why I think I get so passionate about this stuff, just because it becomes a family thing, and it's just tradition and all that la-di-da-di stuff. We were just cloud 9 that game. You remember, it was the NFC Championship game. We were a game away from facing, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Super Bowl. We were denied that. The wheels fell off the bus. They did not go round and round whatsoever. That was the worst loss ever. I'm trying to think if there was any other Packers loss that was more heartbreaking than that one. A close second would probably be against the Giants, coming off of our 15-1 season. That was after the Super Bowl. We're looking at back-to-back Super Bowls. I mean, Green Bay, their offense was fire. That was a close second, but nothing can top whatsoever that Seattle loss. That was bad. Can't have a perfect draft class, but Goody's done a great job so far. I would agree with you. He's had a lot. I mean, he's been a part of the organization for a long time. He's learned from Ron Wolf. He's learned from Ted Thompson. I think he's learned from Ted Thompson's younger years, because when he got older, he turned to crazy old Ted. I would agree with you. I think what he's just done in general, as far as being the GM of the team, being able to pick up not only one but two pass rushers in Za'Darius and Preston Smith, and then he went out there and he got Adrian Amos. The draft classes, for the most part, have been very solid. I think Goody's doing a fantastic job. Great side note there as we continue down the late stretches of the chat. Fluffy boy. Cardinals loss after we got that Hail Mary and Larry. We're talking playoff losses. You guys are going into the deep into the bin. But that Cardinals loss was tough as well. I mean, that one wasn't as tough for me personally. If I remember correctly, that Cardinals loss came off of the 4-6 run the table season. That was the year where we had no business being in the playoffs, and then we ran the table, and then I believe we beat the Giants. Randall Cobb had that Hail Mary at the end of the second half, or end of the first half. That one did not hurt me. And am I even thinking of the same year? Because they played the Giants. I think they played the Cardinals next. Were the Cardinals that good? Did they play them in the divisional round? Boy, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was something about that game that one did not hurt as much as the rest. And I think I'm right. Where I'm going with that one. No, they lost to. It's coming back to me now. That was 2016. They, on the run the table year, they lost to Atlanta. Yeah, they got absolutely embarrassed by them. That was Atlanta's 28-3 year. Yeah, that's what that one was. Cardinals, I think you guys can go back to 15 and 16. That was Atlanta. That was a game that I was not upset. If we're talking about playoff games that they lost, the 4-6 season where they ran the table. I remember before that game started, I poured a drink, I made a toast. I'm like, guys, we weren't even supposed to be here. 6-7 weeks ago we were 4-6, and now we're in the, I think it was, what is it, the NFC Championship game? Did we make it that far with NFC divisional round? Yeah, they got their asses handed to them against the Atlanta Falcons, and it showed 100%. Rodgers' speech could not do it. 4th and 26 shows up on the old stat sheet. Alexander, you are an old school dog, and I love every second of it. I'm glad you're part of this this chat and part of this community. I truly do appreciate you tuning in. 4th and 26, that one stung. I remember that one. I might be young. I might even look younger since I've shaved the facial hair completely off of my face. But yeah, there's no business with the Eagles picking up that 4th and 26. That will infamously go down as one of the most frustrating losses in Packers history. Is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? Personally, I don't think a guy with a 500 career record is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He gets too much credit for beating the Pats twice. He will be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not a huge Eli Manning fan, but I would agree with you. I don't think he's the better of the brothers, but he will find himself in the Hall of Fame. He won't be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he will sneak his way in. They're talking about Leroy Butler being one of the top 25 nominations for the Hall of Fame this year. And I think look how long his journey has been and how far he's come. And Leroy Butler, you talk about Reggie White, you talk about Brett Favre, but Leroy Butler was a solid addition to that Packers team, and he should make his way into the Pro Bowl too. So if Leroy Butler can make it into the Pro Bowl, I think sure as shit Eli Manning, who was trying to do a 2-minute drive to beat the Eagles, should make himself a Hall of Famer as well. You want to talk about Antonio Brown? I do not want to talk about Antonio Brown. There's no point talking about Antonio Brown. If we could sign him tomorrow, and I knew a couple things. I knew that it wouldn't cost us $10 million for 4 games, 6 games, whatever, and I knew that he would be eligible to play the rest of the season. I would be on board with signing Antonio Brown for the remainder of the season. I think that the guy has talent. I think that there's not a whole lot that he could fuck up in 6 weeks, but we've seen what he did to the Patriots in just 2 weeks. So I might want to regress on that comment because he very well could just destroy anything that we have going. But the lack of talent at wide receiver is extremely evident. Bringing him in to go hand in hand with Davante Adams, bueno. But if we're going to talk about Antonio Brown in the offseason or any time outside of the possibility of them signing him for just the remainder of the season, I don't want to hear it. Antonio Brown, no. That guy is drama. That guy should have his own reality show on E! With Jay Cutler, and I've gone full circle. We've gone full circle. So you guys are still debating whether it was 2016. Cardinals was in 2015. I remember 97 Super Bowl versus Broncos. We were heavy favorites. We could run as much as we wanted, but we were pass happy. Holmgren just didn't have the patience. 97, Alexander, you were just pulling it from the memory banks. Super Bowl 33 also killed me too. I hated the Broncos for a few years. Manning has no business being in the Hall. Average quarterback all his career. I hear you, man. But he'll be in the Hall of Fame. It won't ruin my day if he makes his way to the Hall of Fame. Eventually, they're gonna just have everybody in the Hall of Fame. Didn't you hear? It's the year 2020 in just 2 weeks, and everybody gets to be in the Hall of Fame. Everyone gets a participation trophy. And I think if Eli Manning storms down the field and wins the game against the Eagles, which doesn't look like it's gonna happen. He should definitely go in the Hall of Fame. Why did we let go of all our receivers in the past years? A lot of it had to do with cap space. I'm really curious. I'm going to step off to the side here. And I don't think Randall Cobb got much of a contract this year. But I think that a lot of the reasons why we decided not to bring Randall Cobb back had to do with his injuries. I mean, you guys might forget this. I know I kind of forget it from time to time, but he struggled with injuries last year quite a bit. So he signed a $2 million base salary, $2 million signing bonus, a $4.5 million contract, 1-year contract with the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, you look at, we had the cap space to have him in the roster. I think it would have been a nice addition to keep him in the roster. Now Green Bay, let's not kid ourselves on this one either, but Green Bay was showing a lot of potential out of their wide receiving group. You look at an Allison who had a little bit of a down year last year, but he struggled with injuries, so you figured he was going to have a bounce back season. You look at MVS, who had a great first season in the NFL. You looked at the number of receivers between St. Brown and Jamon Moore, and you thought that he rose to the top and that he would be the better player. You thought MVS would be that guy. You look at Kumaro and what he can do in the preseason. You look at Lazard and what he could do in the preseason. I had a lot of high hopes that these guys would step up, and I'm not entirely sure if it was so much the fact that Rodgers just doesn't feel comfortable with these guys. He doesn't want to pass them the football. I'm not entirely sure what the root cause is on why we haven't been able to find more depth at wide receiver, but he seems to be sticking to Adams. He seems to be sticking to Lazard, and then if he feels a little bit flirtatious with his wide receivers, he'll eventually dive it off to either Allison, or he'll dive it off to MVS, or he'll throw it to the water boy in the stands, because at that point he's not throwing the ball to anybody else. So that's my thoughts on letting go of all of our receivers the past year. Outside of that, Jordy, we couldn't afford Jordy. I think we could. I don't know. Apparently, what the rumors were that the offer that the Packers made to Jordy was insulting. In Jordy's contract that he signed with Oakland, Jordy Nelson, Oakland contract. So he signed a 2-year deal with the Raiders worth $15 million, and $13 million of it was guaranteed. Now, that was after the point that the Packers didn't want to sign him, and there were a lot of teams competing for him. So that was a little bit of a courting phase, and I'm sure Nelson would have taken a pay cut, and I think he even said that he would take a pay cut to stay with the Packers. I think at that point they were ready to move on, and that one was the head scratch. Now, because they saved money by cutting Jordy Nelson, the Packers were able to go out there and spend money on Jimmy Graham. Fuck. So yeah, that didn't quite pan out the way that they wanted it to. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Cobb did have a habit of getting injured or disappearing from games. Darius Shepard for preseason Hall of Fame. Yeah, preseason Hall of Fame. I believe he got cut, right? I don't think he made the roster. He might be on the practice squad. We haven't drafted receivers high lately. No, we have not, and that's something where, because we haven't drafted receivers high lately, I wouldn't be opposed to them just doing it. Just go out there, take a shot. 1, 2, I don't care anymore. Give me someone else to benefit or go and compliment Davante Adams, because we got to get. If Rodgers is going to be less mobile and we need some route runners. We need route runners on our offense or on our wide receiving group, and we don't have a ton of route runners. Did Nick Perry ever get signed? Nick Perry did not get signed. He was one of those guys. I brought up his name last week. I thought that the Packers could potentially look to just bringing him back for the remainder of the season at a low-cost contract, but nobody wants to shake a stick at Nick Perry, and Nick Perry is the guy that we paid a lot of money for not too many years ago to be the counterpart to Clay Matthews, and just like the release of Jordy Nelson, did not work out. Yeah, when I think of Nick Perry, all I see is a club. I don't know if he hurt his hand once or if he had that thing on for numerous years, but that guy also injury prone. He made it, and then the practice squad. Yeah, so Shepard's on the practice squad. Ted Thompson hated re-signing free agents no matter how good they were. Yes, he did. He had a pride thing going on there. I'm trying to think. So I believe they signed Nelson and they signed Cobb. I don't know if it was the same year, but it was back-to-back. And Nelson went down with the injury. Cobb had struggled with injuries too. I think with Cobb, he just never really truly lived up to his paycheck. And then with Jordy Nelson, I think it was just an age thing. They didn't want to pay him so much money when he was on, quite frankly, the back nine of his career. I think that's why we decided to let go of Jordy Nelson. Nope, Nick is still a free agent. Perry did not get signed. An hour and 25 minutes in, and this game has gone into overtime. So I'm going to wrap up the show. I know I got 12 of you guys in here. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I don't want to watch the rest of this game. I kind of want to go upstairs and watch The Mandalorian again on Disney Plus. If you guys have not subscribed, I suggest you guys check it out. The Mandalorian is absolutely phenomenal. There's a number of other TV shows that I need to start to binge watch and get caught up on. But I will have another video on Friday. I'm not entirely sure. I will try to post it on Friday. I've been feeling a lot better. I was sick the last couple of weeks, so that's why last week's video came out on a Saturday. Pretty much went to work on the script and film, and fucking death hit me, so I went out for the count and slept for most of the day. But on Friday, we will look forward to the Bears matchup, and then, of course, 3 weeks left in the season. And then we will meet again next Monday night. So thank you guys. So Pac-Man Jake, Big B, Snow, Fluffy Boy. What else we got in here? We got Alexander. I mean, you guys are all, Graham, you guys are all in here consistently week in and week out. Jack, I see your name in there a bunch. Number one Pack. I don't know if you're still hanging out or not. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, checking out the video, participating in the live feed. Josiah decides to comment in for the first time the entire night just to say goodnight and say see ya. So thanks, Josiah. I will see you guys tune in again next Monday night, 9 o'clock Central Standard Time. We'll talk about the Bears game at that point. Hopefully, we'll be 11-3. I'm really looking forward. I don't like when I throw my hands up like that. So regardless, until next time, I will see you guys on the internet. Thanks for watching.